Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. A Wednesday edition where we actually have concrete election results for the most part from the 2024 elections. Donald J. Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. And we'll also be talking about the congressional races a little bit later on, as well as how some on the left have responded to the news of Donald Trump returning to the White House in a couple of months. Jim, you are spot on just about with your predictions. We'll see how the last couple states work out. You did think Harris would eke out Wisconsin, but you called Pennsylvania correctly and that would be the linchpin. And as soon as it was called, it didn't quite put him over the top in the moment, but it definitely put him on the brink, shrinking Harris's avenues for catching up. And then once Wisconsin got called by Fox News, nobody else wanted to call it for a while. But then after Trump's victory speech and so forth, it became obvious as the numbers poured in from Milwaukee County and so forth. And so as the evening unfolded, Trump, I don't think was ever behind that I saw in Georgia initially, falling behind in North Carolina, but then quickly catching up and never relinquishing the lead. And as things currently stand, he may very well sweep all 7 battleground states. So a lot of counting still to happen in Arizona. Nevada's getting close. Michigan also very close. He's still got almost 100,000 vote lead there. So this is how Trump took the stage, eerily reminiscent of almost the exact same hour in 2016 that he took the stage after defeating Hillary Clinton. And here is some of the early comments that he made, pretty subdued for Donald Trump anyway.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
And Jim, to sum up the night in terms of the vote counting, I think it's this moment on CNN that's making the rounds on Twitter that kind of sums it up. I think you know where we're headed with this.
So you asked, are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. We just bring that out here. Harris overperforming in 2020.
Holy smokes.
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Literally nothing?
Literally nothing.
Literally not one county?
They're specifically talking about Pennsylvania, but the message could go over a lot of the country. So, Jim, there's so much to digest here, and we'll try to at least give you the 10,000-foot version. What stood out to you most?
Well, first of all, sometimes you can just watch a GIF being born. And I suspect we'll be seeing Jake Tapper saying literally nothing a lot for on our social media feeds for a long time to come. I don't want to pat myself too much on the back for the predictions. I did think that Harris was going to win 2 of the swing states, Michigan and Wisconsin. And as you said, right now, Trump appears to be on pace to go 7 for 7. Not only that, he gained ground in 48 states. Our home state of Virginia, it took them 4 hours and 40 minutes to call that state. Now, look, in the end, it looks like last I checked, she was up by about 3 percentage points. So it's not like this was, Trump was on the verge of winning it, but it's significantly closer. It was a 10-point margin, I want to say, back in 2020. We think of the state as being pretty darn blue. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe this is genuinely a purple state again. Really good news for Winsome Sears and the other Republicans who are thinking of running in the gubernatorial, lieutenant governor, and state attorney general races next year. I think there are going. We'll talk a bit more about how each candidate won and how it shook out the way they did. But not only will there be the usual questions about polling, and I would point out that like most of the polls said that the swing states were neck and neck. Trump is winning them. Last I checked, like in Georgia at this point, it's like 2.5 points. North Carolina, it was close to like 51-47. So these were a little bit outside or right around the margin of error we had seen. But, So the pollsters can say, we weren't that far off. But again, I don't think anybody was expecting Trump to go 7 for 7 and to just win by this. And in today's Morning Jolt, I said, I think this is the most painful loss for Democrats since Bush beat Dukakis. Some people might even go back to the 80s. Trump's win in 2016 was a bigger shock. I think there were more people who were absolutely convinced Hillary was going to win this and it wasn't even going to be close. I think more Democrats were prepared for this, that this looked like a close race. So they were kind of expecting something along the lines of 2016, Trump winning the Electoral College by a modestly comfortable margin, not, year 2000 Bush v. Gore type situation. But they expected Harris to win the popular vote. And as of this recording, he's up by 5 million. Now, there are a whole bunch of votes in California that have to be counted. There's a bunch of votes in Oregon and Washington. So she'll be adding to her popular vote total and probably closing that gap. But I don't know if there's enough out there to make up a 5 million vote gap. And I really feel like this is going, like, what makes this feel like such a epic, titanic earthquake of an election is the idea of Donald Trump winning the popular vote after being outspent 3-1, after having the media trashing him, after the indictments, after January 6th, all the different reasons you can put in here, the idea that he could win the popular vote. Because for a lot of Democrats, they could convince themselves 2016 was this weird fluke. It was just the quirk of the Electoral College. By the way, Greg, do you think we're going to hear as many calls to get rid of the Electoral College? I mean, if he won the popular vote, it doesn't really matter. In fact, wait, weren't there a whole bunch of blue states that said they would honor the national popular vote winner? Let's get on that, people. They could convince themselves 2016 was just this weird fluke. They could point to the streak of winning the popular vote going back to Bill Clinton, really, and that George W. Bush had only won the popular vote once. Well, now that long streak is broken, and Democrats were able to walk around with this idea that our ideas are really popular. Every once in a while, we have the wrong messenger, but the message is always great. People love us. We're good enough, we're smart enough, and doggone it, people like us. To quote a former Democratic senator, this evidence is that, no, that is not the case anymore. You are not the more popular. The problem really isn't the messenger. The problem is the message. And I just want to point out, one quote. It's unattributed to some House Democrat who said this morning, reporter asked, how are you doing? And he says, we got rejected at every level in every possible way from coast to coast. And Greg, only the family-friendly nature of this podcast is preventing me from responding the way Meg Ryan responded in the diner in When Harry Met Sally.
I don't even know where to go after a line like that, but nonetheless.
The mental picture you realized you didn't need this morning.
Did not need that. Anyway, but a couple of things. First of all, remember the Iowa poll that the Democrats are all giddy about?
Yeah.
It's Harris +3. In the end, Trump wins by, last I saw, it was about 14 in Iowa. Meanwhile, Harris won Illinois by about 4 or 5. It's about 5 points in New Jersey last I saw. And there's still votes to be counted, so it could get a little more lopsided. But New Hampshire was not called. New York was barely over double digits. Yeah, the difference between the two candidates in New York was about the same as it was in Ohio the other way. And so you would not have guessed that coming in. And so just obviously they got their vote out. There were some concerns about whether the newfangled get out the vote machines. Elon Musk obviously did a good job. And I should point out now that later in the week that we're going to have a special on what went right for Trump, what went wrong for Harris, and all that kind of stuff. That'll be Friday's episode. But in terms of, like you said, Trump outpacing himself in 48 out of 50 states. And so when you see some of those traditionally deep blue states, you mentioned Virginia was closer than it should have been, or a lot of people expected it to be. There was definitely a shift in this country. And I think once people dig more into the demographic numbers, they're going to be fascinated by what they see. Well, as we have said throughout the week, if you do need help after the election results, there are ways to get that help. And we should point out right now then that this episode of the Three Martini Lunch is brought to you by BetterHelp. November is the month to express your thanksgiving, your gratitude. And whether you like the results or not on Tuesday night, be grateful that you live in the United States of America, where you actually do get to vote, and then your will does get put into office and in different referendums and so forth across the country. But look, if you're struggling, seriously, it could be about the election. I don't know. It could be about your personal life, could be about your work life, could be about a lot of different things. Maybe you hate traffic. BetterHelp is available. It's professional. All therapists are licensed, accredited professionals. BetterHelp allows you to connect with them in a safe and convenient online environment. It's affordable. Pay a low flat fee for both live sessions as well as messaging with your therapist. Therapy doesn't have to be expensive. It's also convenient. Do it at your own time and at your own pace. Communicate with your therapist as often as you want and whenever you feel that it is needed. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/3ml today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ml. All right, Jim, on to our second good martini here, and that is the state of the U.S. Senate. Right now, it's 51-49 Democrats. We had said going into yesterday that the Republicans looked real good in defending seats and also having two very good opportunities, possibly three, to add seats. Well, all three of those came true, and there's still some outstanding Senate races to be called. But West Virginia, in a lopsided race, Jim Justice flips that one, Joe Manchin retiring. Sherrod Brown goes down in Ohio. Bernie Moreno successfully winning that seat. Narrower margin than Trump won Ohio, but a good 3.5, 4 points last I saw. And Tim Sheehy got the job done out in Montana. Last I saw, Dave McCormick was still leading in Pennsylvania by several tens of thousands of votes with pretty much all of Philly in, so I think he's looking pretty good. Last I saw, Slotkin had edged ahead of Mike Rogers in Michigan, so that's probably not going to happen.
The margin is 7,000 votes right now out of probably north of 5 million cast. So I wouldn't say it's totally over, but not looking great for Rogers. But look, how many times this year, Greg, have I said it's not looking great for Rogers?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, for the Jets and the Michigan one. And so we'll see what happens with Hovde in Wisconsin. That one's tighter than the Trump margin. And then probably going to be Democratic wins in Arizona and Nevada. But we will see.
I just want to point out, as of this year, Sam Brown is ahead by about 1,000 votes in Nevada. Now, that was one I did not have on my competitive list. I thought Rosen was going to cruise. So and less of the vote has been counted in Nevada. So I don't take this one to the bank, but just kind of, good job for you, Sam Brown, for at least overperforming expectations. And because it's Nevada, he gets some bonus for covering the point spread, right? Jackie Rosen cannot cover the spread, way too overfavored. Smart money was on Brown.
No, that's exactly right. And so that means the Republicans should have at least 52 in the U.S. Senate next year. Going to be a fun battle for majority leader here, since Mitch McConnell announced earlier this year he's not going to stand for leader. Could be Thune, could be Cornyn, maybe Rick Scott. We'll see. And then the other thing, speaking of Rick Scott, is that all the hype, as you point out every 2 years, Jim, of the Democrats saying, oh, we got a real shot in a deep red state this year. Rick Scott won by easily double digits, I think 13, 14 points. Ted Cruz wins by almost 10 in Texas compared to a much narrower race against Beto O'Rourke 6 years ago. And Deb Fischer, like we said, single-digit win, but a win nonetheless. So Republicans play perfect defense and gain at least 3.
Yeah, and right now, look, it's a great year for Republicans. My sense of how great a year it is entirely depends on Dave McCormick winning Pennsylvania, because I feel a lot better about just having that extra seat. I saw somebody saying that, ticket splitting is back, because in the last 2 cycles, only Susan Collins had won while the other party was winning her state. And even that comes with an asterisk because Trump won 1 electoral vote in Maine. So technically, as of this hour, that does appear to be the case. The one that looked easiest or most likely, lo and behold, Kari Lake not competitive in Arizona. Shocking, I know. But it looks like Trump's got a good shot at winning Arizona. Again, Nevada, looks like Trump's probably going to win that one. Although I'm not, by the way, I still love John Ralston, but I kind of think that maybe his preference may have led up. It's always very hard to separate out what you want to see from what you're actually seeing, and it's so close. He predicted Harris to win by 0.3 of a percentage point, so that's not really saying, oh, I think Democrats have got this one in the bag, but right now, it looks like Trump's going to hold on to this one. And by the way, the other thing I hate to say, considering how he's already got it, and 6 electoral votes aren't going to make that huge a difference in the end. Greg, does Nevada matter?
Ralston actually hashtagged that last night. We don't matter. When he said that, it looked like Trump was going to hold on, but it had already been called.
They can do the Stuart Smalley invocation in the mirror. But good. By the way, so apparently, is it Nevada or Nevada? Because apparently
Nevada.
3 of our readers, or at least 3 of our listeners, get mad every time. And just be glad that I'm not pronouncing the Louisiana city the way former NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue used to say, the New Orleans Saints select so-and-so. So going through this, Trump's probably going to sweep the blue wall, and Slotkin and Baldwin are probably going to hang on, but they're hanging on by their fingernails. So I don't know if you can say that ticket splitting is back in style or a big factor. These are pretty narrow, margins, and it's hard to knock off a Democratic incumbent. I think it's one of the reasons I'm feeling so invested in McCormick there. On the flip side, it is also very hard to beat a Republican incumbent, particularly in a deep red state. And yet, every cycle, somebody gets the Beto O'Rourke treatment. Somebody gets the great Southern hope of the Democratic Party. And this year, I think you can make an argument. Colin Allred got a bunch of it. Now, as I pointed out in today's Morning Jolt, it's not just that Ted Cruz won. Ted Cruz won by about 1 million votes. But they're still counting. There's still a couple precincts to report. It's like 980,000 last time I checked. 1 million votes, people. This was never that close, right? There are states that don't have 1 million voters, right? That's just the margin in Texas. Texas is a huge state. If you're like 1% down in the polls, you're trailing by 100,000 to 110,000 votes, right? So you just can't make up that margin very easily. Kind of a similar story in Florida. You and I had chuckled about how Rick Scott, always seems to win by 1%. He won by more than 1 million votes. I think it was like 1.6 million this time. And yet I can still find you articles that talked about how vulnerable Rick Scott was and how the Democrats were coming on strong and everything, they've got momentum and look at the crowds of the rallies, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, the Senate race that I became unhealthily obsessed with this entire cycle, simply because someone, when talking about the Senate races, someone who shall remain nameless, talked about how the Democrats had this great shot. Or that Deb Fischer was going to go down in Nebraska this year. I had not heard about any of this. And I'm like, wait, are you kidding me? But this is Nebraska. It's deep red. I've never heard of the challenger. Now, maybe people thought that Dan Osborne was the former University of Nebraska head football coach. I don't know. She won by 7 percentage points. I want to say 60-some thousand votes. Trump is winning by way double digits. Ricketts and the other Senate race is winning by, So you could argue Osborne did better than typical Democrat, but I don't think she was ever in any serious danger, which means. And you go back in the corner posts, I can show you all the mainstream media coverage talked about Osborne as if he was coming on strong and this thing was neck and neck. He did it entirely by releasing internal polls. All right. I'm sorry, my fellow political reporting brethren. That is some horse pucky. That is some nonsense that you can, you got to see something that makes you outside of the Democrats saying, hey, trust us, we're going to win this thing. And we saw that in all 3 states. And so the overwhelming theme, I think, is that Democrats never really know how they're actually doing. And yes, we on the right complain about mainstream media coverage and kind of foreshadowing our next martini here. That in the end, I think mainstream media coverage does hurt the Democrats because they never really know when they're not, doing well. And they end up spending tens of millions of dollars on these challengers to red state Republicans like Ted Cruz and Rick Scott. And they never come anywhere close to winning.
No, exactly right. And I loved one of my favorite moments on social media last night was when the guy tweeted at you when the early votes in Nebraska came in and Omaha had been counted first, so Osborne looked like he was ahead. I thought you said this wasn't going to happen, Jim. You're like,
that guy I think was genuinely curious. I don't think he was expressing skepticism. And I had, I don't want to say going on a limb, but said, don't worry about it. And it was 90-some of Omaha had reported. By the way, I think that Harris got that one congressional district, so she got that one electoral vote out of Nebraska. But something like half the state, all those red counties hadn't reported, and I felt pretty good about that one. So yeah, and no. I think he said sorry for doubting you, and I literally forgave him. So it's okay, guys, don't worry.
Okay, good correction there. And then also the other thing, there's a little bit of ticket splitting, but the thing that staggers me all the time, especially in a presidential year, is the undervote. How many fewer people vote in a Senate race than they do on the presidential when it's probably the next issue on the ballot? But I think it was in Pennsylvania maybe, or maybe it was in a different state in the Midwest, where the Senate candidate had 150,000 fewer votes than Donald Trump. and it was less of an issue with the Democrats, more like 20 or 30,000 votes. But it's just fascinating how people just don't vote on races down ballot.
So when I went to my polling place early in Virginia, Greg, the poll worker was very kind to point out there are referendum on the back. Don't forget to turn it over and vote on the other stuff. And actually, I should go look up those numbers. Once again, we are, I believe, giving tax breaks to widows of those wounded in battle.
Yeah.
God bless them. I'm surprised we needed a referendum on this, but anyway, fine. So maybe like for issues like that, where there's a two-sided ballot, and thankfully we didn't hear anything about butterfly ballots or hanging chads or anything like that. But I guess I wonder, some folks go in, they want to vote for president, and they just not all that interested in all the rest of it.
All right. Well, if it was a late night, and especially if things didn't go your way, you probably turned to something that has the word proof on the side of the bottle. And if that's the case, I hope you took a Z-Biotics first, because I guarantee you, if you did, you woke up feeling better this morning than you would have otherwise.
I didn't drink anything last night. I'm not feeling great this morning, having been up so late. Z-Biotics, get to work on that. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that breaks this byproduct down. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best the following morning.
If I'm being perfectly honest, I think there was more flowing in celebration last night from some of the posts that I was seeing, but they need to be careful too. I hope they took Z-Biotics before they started drinking too. Go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now, and that would be the reaction to the Trump victory on networks not named the Fox News Channel, although Juan Williams had a moment last night that was a little bit similar to some of the things we're going to be talking about here. The reaction of Joy Reid in particular on MSNBC, but there were others on MSNBC as well. But let's start with Gayle King. This is before we got too late in the evening, but things were definitely trending Trump's way, and this was her question to the panel.
What happens to this concept called checks and balances? Because if he gets in, he has the House, possibly the Senate, the Supreme Court. What happens? It seems that he would be in power with no guardrails, so to speak.
It is legal for the Republicans to control the White House and both houses of Congress, which we don't know about the House of Representatives yet. But this idea that it'd be fine for the Democrats, go ahead and kill the filibuster and do whatever you need to do to get a national abortion ban and federal government running voting and all that stuff. Never any angst about that. But if the Republicans happen to control all three, then it's a major crisis. But let's talk about some of the other folks here. First of all, here's Chris Hayes before he probably realized that Trump might also win the popular vote.
We have this very funky and terrible system called the Electoral College, which decides elections in a way that's totally different than every other election in the United States decided and the way that anything's decided anywhere else in the world. We should scrap it.
Let's go over to Joy Reid because she's the most fun here. This was after Florida easily went to Republicans, both in the presidential race and the Senate race.
It's a pure Project 2025 in miniature in Florida, and that kind of extreme, sort of extremist, right-wing, fascist-type government in Florida, does that make it a more attractive place?
But who does she really blame for these problems? This was specifically in response to North Carolina being called for Trump. White women, you've let her down.
This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts, who has tried to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more, party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are and leave it to them to do the right thing.
Or you could not run by trying to divide people on race and gender. Just a thought, Joy. So, Jim, what did you notice last night?
Well, first of all, it was subtle, but you could see it certainly on MSNBC, maybe some of the other channels at 11:36 yesterday evening. the filibuster officially changed from a tool of fascism to a necessary aspect of democracy. It's amazing how it just like that. Now, a lot of people had said that Trump and Senate Republicans should, look, there's a lot of hurt out there. There's a lot of people who are really upset. They should reach out, extend a hand, and say, okay, we're willing to abandon the filibuster now. So also that Chris Hayes' point about, we're the only crazy country that has this system of an electoral college. Does it make him feel better if Trump's winning the popular vote by 5 million? Is that how you want to shake it? Like, that probably seemed like a better complaint earlier in the night rather than when Trump. By the way, we kind of alluded to this earlier. I'm actually very pleased that places that are deep red, deep blue states, if you're a Republican in New York, if you're a Democrat in Texas, if you're, go out and vote. Yeah, you're probably not going to, it's not going to make a difference. And, you feel like you're swimming upstream, or you feel, this is the way Greg and I feel in Virginia most cycles. Once in a while, Virginia's competitive. But it's your duty, and you're making your voice heard, and you're saying your point. You're even saying, like, no, I don't like this. I stand against this. Go out and do it. I think there's no harm. And then you end up with something where Trump ends up winning the popular vote. And it's going to be because Republicans in California and Republicans in New York didn't stay home because they didn't think their vote, because they thought, my vote's not going to make a difference. So, first of all, a good indicator of what kind of a night Republicans are having is when I switch from CNN to MSNBC. That's generally a sign that, I know it's going to be a good night for Republicans, and now I don't need the results the fastest. I just want to see the meltdown. And so you switch over, and I don't know, but there's a referendum on the minimum wage, Greg. I don't know if it's kind of shameful that we haven't talked about it enough, but that was the biggest issue for Rachel Maddow. And you kind of figure the headlines next morning say, minimum wage referendum passes in state, and then in smaller print, Trump wins presidency. And then you played the Joy Reid clip. This morning, this is one of the few times where I really wish I'd DVR'd Morning Joe, because first of all, people said that actually in a lot of the conversations, Joe and Mika were more handling it better than you would think, and more mature and more reflective, and kind of not going on a tirade. But there was one section where Scarborough was talking to Al Sharpton, and Greg, I know this is going to shock you, but Al Sharpton engaged in some racial demagoguery. I know it's not like him, but they talked about how some of the misogyny comes from black men and Latino men, and some of the anti-black attitude comes from Latinos. And in fact, Sharpton emphasized certain groups of Latinos don't like other Latinos, so some Latinos may not have been offended by calling Puerto Rico an island of garbage and stuff like that. And by the end of it, I needed John Madden on the telestrator to demonstrate which group hates which other one, and kind of doodle it all out and explain which group. And by the end of it, I was just like, what if you just ran the best candidate you could and hoped to get votes from everybody? And you didn't say, well, if you're voting against our candidate, you must be racist, you must be sexist, and you didn't have Michelle and Barack Obama rolled out there to try to guilt various groups into it as saying, black men were disappointed in you, you're not supporting Kamala enough. And you didn't say to, women, you don't have to listen to your husbands. I know they're always telling you who you have to vote for. Like, maybe your whole messaging was wrong. Maybe just go put that out there. Float that idea, see how it goes. Anyway, it turned out to be a fantastically entertaining election night. I hope everybody's feeling okay. We talked about the mental health offerings earlier in the project. Maybe there's some folks out there who are Democrats or left of center folks who are tuning into this podcast, trying to think what, right of center guys are saying. I want to tell you, if you're a Democrat and you're really depressed, and all your conservative friends have been going, ha ha, liberal tears, and relishing all of your misery. I don't relish your misery. I want you. It's going to be okay. You're going to see Trump's going to do a bunch of stuff you don't want to do, and Republican Senate's going to do a lot of stuff you don't want to do. It's going to suck for a bit. You're going to see policies enacted you don't want. But then probably in 2026, you guys are going to have a good midterm, because midterms almost always go bad for the incumbent party. And your party is hopefully going to come back a little bit smarter, hopefully a little bit less listening to the fringe. Maybe they're going to believe in border security. They're going to believe in being tough on crime. But you're going to come back someday. And there's no reason to jump off a bridge. There's no reason to be drinking the hemlock. You're going to be fine. We're all going to get through this. And, hey, we're getting closer to the weekend.
Yes, exactly. So just to keep track now, America, not racist in 2008 and 2012, very racist in 2016, back to not racist in 2020, and now we're racist and sexist.
Now again, more racist and sexist than ever. That's right, yeah.
Yes, exactly. By the way, hats off to our friend Dana Perino for absolutely unloading on Kamala Harris, for not coming out last night and saying anything, for not even making a phone call to concede. At least Hillary did that in 2016. Apparently she's not going to say anything until late this afternoon or early this evening, maybe just to get onto the evening news as close to that time as possible. Once again, the Republican winner of a presidential election has not had the satisfaction of watching their opponent appear publicly the night of the election and concede since 1988.
I was going to say also, like, if she did it at like 9 a.m. this morning, would it not be on the evening news?
I think it probably would be.
I think it's a big deal any way you want to shake it. So, and it was looking pretty clear last night. I understand maybe you want to wait until everything's out of the range of the remaining votes and all that stuff, but it's pretty clear how it's going down. But anyway, hey, happy Wednesday, America.
Amazing. Jim, have a great day. I will actually be out tomorrow. Craig Collins will be in for me. And then, as mentioned, on Friday, Jim and I will have a special on what went right for Trump, what went wrong for Harris, and much more. So, Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday and join Jim and Craig on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.